This episode is sponsored by Kerkering Barberio, your trusted partner in tax, audit, and outsourced accounting services. Serving Sarasota, Manatee, and the greater Tampa Bay area for over 50 years, KB helps clients achieve their personal and business goals. Visit kbgrp.com to learn more. Hello, and welcome to the Business Observer from the Corner Office podcast. I'm Mark Gordon, managing editor of the Business Observer. Today's guest is John Fetsick, COO and general manager of the University Park Country Club. John, welcome, and thanks for being here.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Excellent. So University Park Country Club in East Manatee County is one of the long-standing clubs in our region, very storied history. We're going to get into some of your career in a little bit because you've done things in other sports, which I find really interesting as well. But tell us, UPCC, what is your role there as COO and general manager entail?
Sure. And actually, just for a bit of clarification, I'm actually the general manager of both the Country Club and the Homeowners Association. So here at University Park, we are a country club, as you state, but we're also a 1,201 home residential community, for which I'm the general manager for both. So really, my day-to-day job, I run day-to-day operations. I'm the person that is tasked to lead our operations both at a country club and the HOA. As I mentioned, 1,201 homes, over 1,200 acres, 32 neighborhoods behind the gate. Many people don't realize when you come behind that gate that there's actually 1,201 homes here. So a very large community as well.
Yeah, so 1,201 homes and you're head of an HOA, 32 neighborhoods. So you have a lot of, for lack of a better phrase, cooks in the kitchen, I think, John. How do you, as a leader, handle all the parties and entities and needs and wants and desires in a country club and a homeowners association?
I'll tell you, that is one of the number one things I had to get used to. You know, generally most people have one boss. I like to say have more like 2,500 bosses. So you definitely have to learn that quickly. Everybody has an opinion. And really, one of the beauties of University Park is there's a lot of residents here and members that have been very successful in their careers, right?
Sure.
So they're used to success. They've had a successful career, whether it's a doctor, a lawyer, personal business. So they have a certain way that they want to see things. And that's something that you have to adapt to quickly. You quickly understand that every decision you make is wrong to somebody. But you still have to be confident in your decision making.
Yeah, and what kind of process do you use in your decision making? You know, obviously you're going to have to listen to people. You're going to have to be somewhat of a consensus builder. You really can't do that job without. But you know, are you kind of a go from the gut person? Do you talk it over with an assistant? Do you marinate it for days and days? You know, what's sort of your process and how you make decisions?
Sure, great question. I do not make decisions from my gut. I can tell you that. You know, I'm a big knowledge acquisition guy, right? I want to make decisions. I want to make the right decision. And I think that you have to make sure that you're acquiring as much information as possible. You want to make an informed decision. You want to get the pulse of your leadership team. You also want to get the pulse of the board, and then also your residents and members, right? You don't want to make a decision that goes against what the community may want, the strategic future of our club and community.
Yeah, but it sounds like, too, you said you've learned, maybe almost as a parent, sometimes you have to make a decision that your constituent might not necessarily like. You know, I know you have kids and I have a 16-year-old, and sometimes that's the way it is. You're making a decision that you think is the best given the, as you just said, the information. How have you dealt with that side of it?
Sure. I mean, I'm hired to make decisions, and I'm hired and I need to trust that I'm making the right decision for the betterment of the club and the community. Once you gather the right information and you gather the input of those constituents that you trust, you just have to, you have to go with your gut, and you have to make the right decision that you know and believe is for the betterment of the club and the community. And once you make that decision, you have to be confident in it and stick to it. And you have to understand that 95% of the community may agree with that decision. And generally speaking, I'm only going to hear from the 5% that disagree. And but that's okay. You still need to be confident in your decision and move forward with it.
I think, as you said, that's something I think as a leader, you learn as you go. I know at the Observer Media Group and the Business Observer, when I first started overseeing and supervising reporters, I really wrestled after I made a decision. Did I say the right thing? Was that the right way to give feedback? Was that the right way to do that? And as you grow into it, you're like, I did it, and we're just going to move on. We're going to let it be and move on. But I think, how have you grown into that? I mean, have you learned that as you've moved along in your career?
100%. It's something that you learn. You really can't learn it until you experience it. I think that's definitely
Yeah,
something that you learn on the job. They don't teach you in college how to
yeah, for
react and
sure.
respond to that type of criticism. So, I'm from the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. I know we're going to get into that shortly. So I never dealt with alligators. Well, when you get to this type of job, you definitely build up some alligator skin. You
Yes.
have to definitely make decisions, be confident, and then be able to kind of brush it off and move forward.
Yes. All right. Well, and you teased it. Let's move on to that. We're gonna segue. I mean, it's so obvious in your voice. You and I haven't emailed each other, never actually met before this, but you are Philadelphia through and through. And tell us about kind of, well, actually, take me way back. Tell us about growing up. What part of Philadelphia you grew up in, and tell us about this sports organization that you worked for in Philadelphia.
Sure, sure. So I was, born and raised in Philadelphia, actually in a small town called Fishtown. It was
Sure.
just outside of Center City. I'm the oldest of four. Myself, two sisters, and a brother. We were born and raised in a three-bedroom row home in Fishtown section of Philadelphia. Um, Parents married 40 years, so grew up in a loving family in the Philadelphia area. Went to a small Catholic college in Delaware County called Newman College. It's at the time it was Newman College, now Newman University, and I studied accounting. And after graduating Newman College, I got an internship with the Philadelphia Phillies, and I actually took an unpaid internship. We could speak a little bit about how that happened, but I took an unpaid internship, and that really paved the way for where I am today. I left the Phillies after almost 16 years of employment, and I was director of finance when I left there after 16 years.
Wow. So, did you know when you were majoring in accounting that you were going to try and work for a sports team?
Never had that in my mind. I was growing up, I was always good at math, and I always envisioned myself as being someone in the corporate world. So that kind of just in college, I came from a blue collar family. So when I was evaluating what my future entailed, I really didn't know. And the fact that I was into the corporate world or was interested in the corporate world and was good at numbers, I decided accounting was the right path. Did I ever believe that was going to bring me to professional sports? I would be lying if I said that was the case.
So, you worked for the Phillies. Tell us about that. How did you kind of get into that job and kind of move up in the organization?
Sure. So that's actually one of my first lessons learned is I actually had, you were asking about the pathway to professional sports. I actually had an internship lined up with a CPA firm. I remember it was going to pay me $17 an hour. And at the time, that was a good pay for someone that was young, again, coming from a blue collar family. And that internship was pulled out from under me. And what I quickly learned was the power of networking. Okay.
Yeah.
My aunt's best friend was the director of group sales at the Phillies. I was giving my resume to everybody I possibly knew. And I got an interview with the CFO at the time, John Nicholas. And he said, "Hey, I don't have a budget. I can't pay you, but I can give you the credit hours for you to graduate from college." And I remember I got $15 a week gas reimbursement and free lunch, and that was my
Yeah.
pay. And again, 15, 16 years later, I'm director of finance, running the accounting department day to day.
Yeah. So, you learned that, hey, I'm going to use this connection and then execute on it, right? I mean, that sounds like it's part of it. It's not just using my aunt, but it's figuring out the right people to talk to, it sounds
Well,
like.
that's exactly right. And also taking advantage of the opportunity. I was fortunate in the relationship and again, the power of networking to get my foot in the door. But then what do you do with that opportunity to bring success and continue to grow? How do you take an unpaid internship and turn it into a full-time job and then quickly grow as a young man to, go from a staff accountant to a manager or to a senior accountant to a manager to a director in a short period of time? And I'll tell you, that just took a lot of effort. I always say be a sponge, right? You go in there and you're a young man, pretty green, and then you just be a sponge and you learn and you're dedicated. I was an unpaid intern, and I remember working shifts till 10 o'clock at night. I was in the foxhole with the CFO and the leadership team, and that quickly resonated with the team there, and they kept me on
Yeah.
board and grew into where I was.
What were some of those lessons that you learned that stick out in your mind that helped you in growing your career in that time when you were in your young 20s, basically?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, it was a lot of fun, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Born and raised in Philadelphia, a huge sports fan.
Yeah.
It was pretty easy to be engaged in your day-to-day work, going to the ballpark every day. Um, and it's very cliche, but it's true. You must work hard, put your head down and grind.
Yeah.
Um, you're not going to grow and advance in your career without putting in that extra effort. Okay, there were folks that I worked with that didn't have that same work ethic, and they were left behind. And
Yeah.
it's your job to represent yourself, work hard, and put yourself in a position when the senior leaders are looking for, who can I give this project to? Who do I want on the team that's going to bring this project to fruition? You want to be that person. And I prided myself in that, especially early in my career, and that gave me opportunities to do a lot of different things at the Phillies that, if I didn't have that ambition, may not have happened.
Yeah. For sure. As you said, go to the ballpark every day. I'm curious, from a timing standpoint. As we know from email, right? I lived in Philadelphia on and off for almost 12 years and got a master's degree from Villanova, so I know the area pretty well. From a timing, did you work at Veterans Stadium or were you always Citizens Bank?
Citizens Bank Ballpark. So I started the second season there.
Got
So
it.
I started there in 2005. The ballpark opened in 2004. So
Yes.
I was a fan at Veterans Stadium, but never worked there. From what I understand, it was not a nice place to work. So I was pretty fortunate in that my first office was Citizens Bank Ballpark, not Veterans Stadium.
Yes, I went. I'm a big Mets fan, and actually went to the first Mets Phillies game at Citizens Bank that the Phillies won on a walk off in the ninth inning, and that was hugely disappointing. But oh well.
That's right. Well, it was disappointing to you, right?
Yes, yes. All right. So you're growing up in your career there. What kind of steps did you take to get? There's other people who are going to want to move up as well. And what kind of steps did you take as a young man to put yourself in position to become director of finance for a Major League Baseball team?
Sure. One thing I think, and I'll speak about myself here a little bit, but I never wanted to just be an accountant behind the desk. I wanted to do more. I was very interested in the business overall, the business operation. So when different projects came up that were outside of the traditional silo of accounting, I raised my hand, and I was very interested, inquisitive about what else is there within the Phillies umbrella. So as my career grew at the Phillies, I became the player insurance guru. So
Yeah.
I handled all the player life and disability insurance. I became chair of the capital committee, which is where we made all of our capital investments in the ballpark, and not only in Philadelphia but in Clearwater, Florida, and the Dominican Republic. So, you know, I became the treasurer of Phillies charities, right? So rather than just do the books of Phillies charities, I was actually on the board and really took that position and role and really grew and had a large role within the Phillies charities nonprofit sector. So, how do you take a traditional accounting job and make it more?
Yeah.
So I would say just be a sponge, show interest, and grow outside of just the traditional mold of what you're looking to accomplish.
And so as you've grown in your career there, and then here for the past 4 or 5 years in the Manatee County area, what do you look for in leaders? What stands out when you're at UPCC in your organization looking for leaders in any department? What characteristics stand out to you?
Absolutely. I'll start with one word, and it's very cliche, but empathy. I think
Yeah.
as a leader, you need to lead with empathy. I believe as a leader, we have to understand that work is very important. But all of us, myself, our colleagues, we all have family, we have friends, we have lives outside of here. And you need to understand that sometimes that's going to come into the workplace.
Yeah.
How do you show empathy and support for your colleagues when they may be going through a difficult time, or you may not know they're going through a difficult time, but it's really taxing their work. So I think the number one thing is to just show empathy and show your staff that you really care about them, not only professionally, but more importantly, personally.
Yeah. Yeah, so important, right? It's when you think about like, I mean, and I can ask you what your parents did for a living, but it's totally different than when our parents grew up and how the sort of work expectations. I don't think company culture was a word really in the 70s and 80s that people embrace like they do today.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I mentioned I grew up in a blue collar. My dad was in construction. He was an iron worker. So, a union worker up in the Philadelphia
Yeah.
area. My mom was largely a stay at home mom. They made a decision early on my mom was going to raise four kids, and she was great at her job. She has
Yeah.
four college educated children, all very successful in life today. So my mom's investment was in all of us kids, raising us kids to be the best we can be. And my dad just, put the work boots on every day and worked hard to make sure he was a provider for all of us.
Yeah, for sure. And what's the piece of advice, and maybe this is how you got to sort of this empathetic ideal or and sort of value, but what's a piece of leadership advice that stands out that you've learned in your career?
Sure. So it was from the CFO of the Phillies. John Nicholas is his name, and he told me, God gave you two ears and one mouth." And I know we all hear that, right? But it's very important to listen twice as much as you speak. Okay. Today's interview, I'm going to do a lot of speaking. I'm probably not going to learn too much today. Okay. But when you have two ears and you listen to your staff, when you listen to their ideas, their creativity, what may be going on in their professional life or their personal life, you're going to be much more informed and you're going to be able to make decisions or provide empathy, adaptability. All those things don't happen unless you use two ears and, generally speaking, one mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good lesson, right? Nobody wants to go to a meeting or situation and hear the boss just blah 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 the whole time.
It's not going to work. It won't.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, or it may work, but you're not going to get the maximum from your team. You're not going to get
Yeah.
feedback. You're not going to get other people's ideas or vision. Um, my best idea is many times others. I,
Yeah. And it's interesting too because in baseball, right? And I said I'm a big baseball fan. You sort of came of age in baseball during that transition, right? Because in the 80s and 90s, it was very hierarchical, right? It was very general manager, and that was the guy who made the decision. And I'm curious, what was your experience with the Phillies and sort of the Moneyball era, where there was a lot more group thinking for decisions? What was that experience like?
Sure. So I give great credit to David Montgomery. David Montgomery was the president and
Yeah.
CEO for the Phillies for a couple of decades. He actually started as a sales intern in the ticket office and grew to the president, CEO, and general partner of the Phillies. He led a culture of inclusion, communication, really a family like atmosphere. And when you cultivate that type of atmosphere and culture, it's one that's inclusive. It's one that's everybody is rowing in the same boat. You all have the same goal and objective. And when you have that culture and it starts from the top, okay, when you set that culture from the top, that trickle down effect is very, very successful. And I give him great credit for many decades leading the Phillies in that way.
Yeah, and now that I'm thinking about it, you were there for a World Series.
I was there in '08 and '09.
Yeah.
We won the World Series in '08. We beat the Tampa Bay Rays. So I know we have some listeners here today that are probably
Yes.
Braves fans, so I apologize. And but then in '09 we lost to the Yankees, which I know you're not a fan of the Yankees, Mark. I believe you're a Mets guy.
Correct.
So yes, I actually had a World Series ring from '08, and I have a National League pennant ring from '09. Same exact ring as the players. And so that is definitely one of the many gifts I've brought with me to Florida from the Philadelphia area.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Very cool. What about in your career? What and, think about baseball, right? There's this attitude, especially like take a closer, like a Papelbon or an Edwin Diaz, right? You gotta flush it. You gotta move on to the next game if you blow a save. So we'll use that sort of metaphor. How have you overcome some setbacks and missteps and mulligans in your career? What stands out in your mind?
It's interesting. I was thinking about this because I kind of had a sense this question may come up. And, failure, one thing about a leader is you cannot be afraid to make mistakes.
Hmm.
And you can't be afraid to fail, frankly. You learn more from failure than you do from success. And the best leaders actually step up during opportunities for failure or areas where you need to lead the way. And whether that's leading a company or being a parent, obviously we all were just through Hurricane Milton. And I had some folks say, "Oh, how are your kids?" And I said, "Their calm was my calm." You need to
Yeah.
lead by example, right? If I'm freaking out and I'm getting nervous or scared, that's going to trickle down to them. And you can take that same thought process and mentality to your leadership as an organization. If I'm level headed and I'm reasonable and I don't allow my emotions to go up and down, peaks and valleys, the same can be said for your staff. And so I think that having that leadership, accepting failure, learning from failure, and growing from it is just a valuable lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You got to be like the duck, right? Like calm above the water, but paddling like crazy
That's right.
underneath.
That's right. Hey, if I close my door or if I'm in the shower in the morning or if I go home, you know, sometimes you have to wear it differently. But when in the office,
Yeah.
um, I'm the leader that has to be cool, calm, and collected and set the tone for the staff that's here.
Yeah. I want to go back to University Park Country Club in the future, but before I ask you that question, how did you get from, so you're in Philadelphia, obviously, and you had a young family. What sort of happened in your life that led to you coming down for this position
Sure.
in
I've been
Florida?
asked that hundreds of times, right? I
Yeah.
have what many would believe is the dream job. And frankly, it was. I spent a great deal of time at the Phillies, but I was ready for a new challenge. I had accomplished a great deal in a short amount of time, and I was ready for something new. My wife is a registered nurse in the ICU. She's actually an ICU nurse at Lakewood Ranch Medical Center. And COVID hit, and our kids were at an age where if we were going to do the relocation, it was do it then or we had to wait for them to get done their schooling. So we decided to do it.
Yeah.
And being in sports and hospitality, professional sports, I didn't want to leave there and go to some corporate office. So I was looking for a unique niche market. And I found actually, I was hired here as the director of finance. So my first role at University Park was not the GM, it was director of finance. And the two organizations, the two industries are very similar.
Yeah.
Professional sports, country clubs, sports and hospitality, customer service.
Sure.
They're very, very similar. So I went for the role. I did about 6 Zoom interviews over COVID, and then they flew my wife and I down, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Not similar in positions, but similar in flew us down. My wife was recruited for a job in healthcare in 2005, and we lived in Philadelphia, and we flew down here, and it was gray and dark and miserable in Philadelphia, and we went to Sarasota, Siesta Key, Anna Maria, and said, "Yeah, this is great. Let's do it."
It was not a difficult decision,
Yes.
and one that we do not regret. We absolutely love it. Every day, I say I live in paradise, and opportunities have come up to go back home, and what I call home, my hometown, and
Yeah.
it hasn't even been a thought. I enjoy what I do here at University Park, and I enjoy our lifestyle. Our kids have really adapted well, so very, very pleased with the decision.
Yeah. And with University Park Country Club is we're recording this in late October, but you'll be hearing this in sometime in November, early December. What can we expect in 2025 from University Park Country Club?
Sure. Well, as you know, we're ramping up, right? So our season, our busiest time of year is coming up. It's November through April. We actually just announced our season at a glance, which is 6 months of member events across golf, rackets, dining, off-campus events, bus trips, casino trips, spring training trips to Bradenton or Tampa. So our focus, and really ever since I took over as GM, is 2 words: member experience.
Hmm.
We are a country club.
Yeah.
We're a country club that provides a member experience. We provide a number of amenities that provide a lifestyle. And that is our goal. If we provide an excellent member experience, the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah, you said spring training trips. I'm surprised you didn't say Clearwater to go see your Phillies.
Well, it's a little far away. One thing I will
Yes.
tell you is we did go last spring, the Phillies Orioles in Sarasota.
Yes.
So one of my colleagues, he's actually the director of member experience. He handles all of those trips, and I was not surprised when he told me that one of the trips was going to be Phillies Orioles in Sarasota.
Yes.
I did join that trip. I was able to bring my wife and kids, and we enjoyed it.
Awesome. All right, John, before we let you go, we got 3 rapid fire questions. And
Okay.
for the first time, I think ever in the From the Corner Office podcast, these are going to be geographic focused questions. They're going to be all Philadelphia questions. As I said, I went to graduate school there, met my wife there, lived there on and off for almost 12 years, so I can't not take this opportunity.
All right.
Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. Because you worked in the Phillies, this can't be answered as an adult, so I'm going to say 12-year-old John Fetsick, because Philadelphia is an Eagles town through and through. Would you rather have 50-yard line seats to an Eagles Super Bowl or front row seats to a Phillies World Series Game 7? 12-year-old John Fetsick.
12-year-old John Fetsick, seats to the Phillies game.
Really? So you were baseball over football as a kid?
Yeah, actually, so I'm now an Eagles season ticket holder. I still am today, even though I live in Florida. I've been to the last 2 Super Bowls in Arizona and Minnesota. I was at the first Eagles Super Bowl victory. But I didn't develop my love for the Eagles until I was older in life. I feel like that's more of an adult sport, tailgating, going to games. So definitely raised more of a Phillies fan than Eagles fan.
Interesting, because it is, as you know, they love their Phillies and they love the Flyers and the Sixers, but it's still an Eagles town. I think it's always going to be an Eagles town.
I'll have those Eagles season tickets till I die.
Yes. Okay, and this could be, it doesn't have to be as 12-year-old. I think I'm going to guess the answer, but Poconos or down the shore? What's their preferred Philadelphia vacation?
Down the shore. I actually was raised part of my life in North Wildwood, New Jersey. My parents, my grandparents, a lot of my family still have homes in North Wildwood. My wife and kids still spend a month in North Wildwood to this day every summer.
Awesome. Down the shore, for those who don't know, that's the Philadelphia only term for going to the beach. Down the shore.
Down the shore, that's right. Cape May.
Excellent. All right, last question. You probably could guess this. Pats or Geno's?
I know it was coming. Pats.
Pats.
Pats, it's not even close. Their grill is dirtier. It makes a better cheesesteak, 100%.
Yes, for those, again, who don't know, Pats or Geno's are the 2 famous Philly cheesesteak places in Philadelphia.
I knew it was coming. I couldn't wait for it, and definitely Pats. How about you, Mark?
Oh, I'm Pats all the way. It's just grimy, old school. You got to know what you're ordering right when you get there. I was with my grad college roommate, and his girlfriend from Portland, Maine, asked for a veggie sandwich, and that was not a good idea to do at Pat's. But you got to know what you're ordering when you get there.
Absolutely, whiz-wit.
Yes, whiz-wit, right. Excellent, John Fetsick, University Park Country Club. Thank you so much for joining us on the From the Corner Office podcast.
Mark, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Business Observer From the Corner Office podcast. I'm your host, Mark Gordon. This podcast was produced by Reed Corley of the Corley Company in Sarasota. To hear more episodes of From the Corner Office podcast, go to businessobserverfl.com.